Hi, so for this question, we're going to be looking at file input and output. So write a function called write_weird_file. Write_weird_file should take in two positional parameters. First one should be a file name, and the second one should be a list. And the function will also have three keyword parameters: mode, sort first, and reverse first. Remember, keyword parameters are those that are optional. So the default value for mode should be right. Default values for both sort first and reverse first will be false. So what does this function do? Well, it should write the contents of the list to the given file name. Each item of the list should be on a separate line. This is important. And the list items can be strings, floats, characters, or integers. If the mode is write mode, then it should overwrite the current contents. And if the mode is append, then it should append to the current contents. And okay, so we can assume there's no other value for mode, so don't need to worry about read mode. So if sort first is true, we're going to sort the list first before writing. If reverse first is true, we're going to reverse the list first before writing. If both are true, then we'll sort first, then reverse. Alright, so let's get started. First thing, we're going to want to go ahead and start defining the function. So define write_weird_file. And we know there's going to be a total of 5 parameters. So let's start with the first one, file name. So just keep it simple. I'm just going to call it file name. Second one will be a list. I like to name my lists listy because it reminds me it's a list. And so now with the keyword parameters, we're going to start with mode. Default value should be a W, right? So mode is equal to write mode. Sort first and reverse first should both start with false. Reverse first is false. All right, and now what do we want this function to do? So since we're writing things from a list into a file, right? I'm gonna go ahead and open a file. So file is equal to open. Which file is it? Well, the file will depend on what you call the function, what parameters you use when you call the function. So in order to account for that, we'll just call it file name. So whatever the user puts in here is the file that gets opened. And the mode also, like file name, whatever mode the user wants to open it in, that's the way we're going to open it in our function. So okay, now we need to go ahead and start editing the list, right? Because there's a potential that they might want to sort it or reverse it, right? So we're going to go ahead and just with the sort parameter, sort first. If sort first, then listy, sort the list, right? And so the reason I'm just going to write it as sort first. So if sort first is true, this will run. If it's false, this won't run. It's short, as simple as possible. All right, and so now we can write the reverse part, right? So the reason why I can write this reverse part with another if rather than an elif or an else statement is because these conditions are actually independent, right? So whether or not we sort the list has no effect on whether or not we reverse it. Only cases when both of them are true, but then we want to sort first, then reverse it. But I've accounted for this by first checking if we need to sort it, then checking if we need to reverse it. If I had flipped these two around, right? So if reverse was here and then sort, and both of them were true, then we would end up reversing and sorting, which would be different than sorting and reversing. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and start the writing process. So we know that we're writing from a list to a file. So the list has, different items in it, right? Different number of items. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5, right? And we want to write all of these items to that file. So the easiest way is to basically go through each item in the list and go ahead and write it. And so we can just use a for loop. So for I, as our placeholder for I in listy, what do you want to do? Well, we're just going to write to the file. So file.write I. And don't forget to close it. File close. All right, let's see what we get when we run this. Okay, cool. So we have an error, right? So what is this error? Well, it says line 31 in write_weird_file. This line is wrong. There's something wrong with it, and it's a type error. The write argument must be a string, not an integer. So yeah, so with looking at like lists such as these, right? they're all strings, so it will write the right argument will take and write it correctly. But when we encounter things like this, right, a list of integers, write can only take in string type. So we actually need to convert this to string first. Okay, now let's run it again. Okay, so no error this time. So let's look at our output text. So we have all the lines written, at least for the first one, right? But there's something wrong. And well, what exactly is wrong? Well, we want everything to be written on separate lines. As the question says, each item of the list should be on a separate line. So how do we code that into our function? Well, easiest way to do it is just to, every single time you write your whatever the string version of the item in the list, you also add a new line. So every time it runs, it'll add the string item in, and then add a new line so that every item will be on a separate line rather than all in one line. So now run this again. Take a look at output text. Does this look right? Yep, everything's written. They're all on separate lines. So yeah, it looks good. So let's go ahead and submit this. All right, well done.